I lied about wearing revealing outfits to dance class until he followed me and publicly exposed me. I lied to my husband about wearing revealing outfits to my dance classes until he followed me and publicly exposed me, not only disgracing me in front of everyone who respected me, but also destroying my life afterwards. My name is Sam, and I'm 31 years old. I've been married for 8 years to Paul, and I'm a liar, and my lies have finally caught up to me, causing more damage than can be fixed. Before I met Paul, I didn't live the best life. I did different kinds of things to get money, mostly having numerous boyfriends. I dated a lot of rich guys. I didn't care if they were married or not. I just did what I could to survive. But then there was a particular man that I met years ago. He was really wealthy, and anytime we were together, I was literally in paradise. He took really good care of me, and I didn't care that he had a wife or that he was a politician. I even left the other men I was dating just so I could be committed to him, but his wife found out, and she almost destroyed me. So I had to run away from that place to a different city entirely to start a new life. That was where I met Paul. Paul happened to be an uncle to my friend, the one I stayed with when I got to the city. He is a pastor, a reputable one at that. Although he wasn't a full-time pastor, he owned a tech company that he ran himself, but he still made time for church and everything attached to it. His niece, my friend, attended his church, and she had forced me to go with her. But when I saw Paul on that altar, teaching something about shaky faith, I knew I wanted him, and I was willing to do anything to get him, including pretending to be a devoted Christian. I started attending his church. Every Bible study, too. I made sure that I was in his face every time. I joined the workers in the church. I joined 2 different groups, the ones that I was sure would have the opportunity to report to him every day. I went to church every day, even on days I didn't need to. I would pray and even teach little kids there. It took months, but my hard work paid off. Paul noticed me. He would praise me in front of everyone. He would call me occasionally into his office, and he would advise me. And after learning that I stayed with his niece, he was even more kind and relaxed with me. So much so that I started to gain access to his home. I met his parents through my friend, and his parents liked me instantly. They had even said I would be a perfect daughter-in-law. I was glad they approved of me. Although when I continued attending his church, his niece was surprised at how religious I was being. But I managed to convince her that I was a new person. Luckily, she didn't know about my source of livelihood back then, or the real reason I ran away from where I stayed before. So it was easier to make her believe that. I had gotten rid of all my revealing dresses. I wore only conservative clothes, the ones I knew would appeal to Paul. I watched him closely. I knew his likes and dislikes. I knew what interested him and what didn't. I even got to know his favorite sports, and everything he loved became everything I loved. I know what you guys must think of me now, but I was just so obsessed with being Paul's wife. All the men I dated in the past weren't men who wanted to get married to me. They just wanted to have fun and go. Even the single men I dated were super comfortable with flings, and I thought I was too. Until I met Paul, I was just desperate to be his wife, especially with the way he speaks about marriage. It sounded so beautiful, and I knew that marrying him would be the best thing that could happen to me. And I did marry him, after 2 years of fully devoting myself to him and the church. Paul finally asked me to be his girlfriend, and 3 months later, we were married. Paul wanted to avoid any temptations while we dated, and also because his church looked up to us. So we got married quickly. I was so happy. I was on top of the world. I finally got what I wanted. And our first 2 years of being married, I was really happy. I liked being respected and admired. I was the envy of the women in church. Literally every single young woman wanted to be with Pastor Paul. And within 2 years, I achieved that. Then I got pregnant with our baby boy. And within 2 years of marriage, I had our child, Peter. Peter looks so much like his dad. There was no doubt in anyone's mind whose child he is. And as he grew up, he became more like his dad. He followed his dad everywhere. If he wasn't in school, he was with Paul. He also started teaching kids his age Bible study. And he is so smart. When asked what he wants to become, his response has always been the same. Like my daddy. So I had a great family, one that everyone was envious of. And you'd expect that I would be happy, that I would continue to live like that. but I wasn't happy. And in my stupid quest for happiness, I ruined the most important thing in my life. Everything started after I gave birth to Peter. I do love my son, but I wasn't exactly thrilled being a mother. After I gave birth to Peter, I was too scared to have another baby. To be honest, Peter had been a mistake. My plan only extended to being a wife, not a mother. And the night I conceived, I had forgotten to take my pills. But I did take one the next day. But somehow it didn't work. Paul found out first about my pregnancy before I did. He was the one who walked into the bathroom after I peed on the stick. So there was no other way but to keep the baby. And after Peter, I took extra care to never get pregnant again. I even got my tubes tied, without Paul knowing about it. He only kept expressing his wish to have another child. I pretended like I was interested too, but I hated how I looked after giving birth, the extra fat that never went away. I started to hate dressing the way I did too. I didn't want to have to pretend like I loved the church like Paul did anymore. It became really tiring. And there was the fact that being a busy pastor's wife came with heavy duty. I was always involved in one activity or the other, especially when Paul would travel for work. I had to take over the entire thing until he came back, but I didn't find joy in what I was doing, the pretending to be a perfect wife and mother, the women who came to me for advice too. I just wanted everything to stop. I was choked up by my own lies, and I couldn't stop pretending. And Paul, he never noticed. He thought I was happy being a housewife, that I was glad to be the mother in church, maybe because I was that great at pretending. Our sex life wasn't great either. Paul was either too tired or too busy. He did make time for us, but it was either too quick or not satisfying. He made up for it with gifts. Paul gave me endless gifts. He was always bringing something home from his trips and from work. I had lots of jewelry and dresses thanks to him, but it didn't matter to me that he did those things. I just was greedy and selfish, and I wanted the things that I couldn't possibly have, even though at that time I thought I had good reasons to. Joining the dance class had started as a great decision. I was invited to it by one of the women in church. I didn't want to go at first. I didn't know how dancing would stop me from being unhappy. But when two other women kept talking about it, and how they were now in great shape thanks to it, I decided to join in, mostly to get back my banging body. I became a regular member of the dance class. I perfected dance routines, and I even helped teach some other women. I became really happy. I thought that I had finally found what would make me happy. But a year after joining the dance class, our female instructor suddenly decided to quit. She was getting married, and her husband lived far away, so she had to move with him. We quickly got another instructor, and that was where the problem started. Kelvin, his name was Kelvin. Kelvin is a very handsome young man, although a few years younger than me, about 6 years. He was fit and he looked like a model, rather than a dance instructor. He apparently worked at a gym before he came down to our town. Apparently, he wanted to start afresh in a new place. The number of women increased rapidly in the dance class. They all wanted to see and perhaps even get access to him. Me too. I cannot even deny how instantly attracted to Kelvin I was. It wasn't anything like what I felt for Paul. It was different. It was pure lust. I found myself having sexual dreams about him most nights, and over the next months, it became even worse. I didn't know how to handle my new feelings for Kelvin, but I knew it wasn't something I should pursue, so I tried to hide it. I pretended not to notice him, even when he commended me when I got a new dance step right, and even when he would come to me and touch me, in an attempt to correct a move I was doing wrongly, and I guess me trying to pretend I wasn't affected by him, the way other women were, presented to him as a challenge. He made me his assistant in dance class, and he would purposely request that I waited behind most times. He even suggested private lessons, which I refused at first. Then he started pestering me to have lunch with him, but I refused, mostly because I was scared to be seen with him outside of dance class. I didn't want any rumors being spread, but instead of Kelvin backing down, he continued different approaches to getting me alone with him, even though I was often a willing candidate. To impress him even further, I changed my style of dressing, especially after that one time, when I wore a tighter bra instead of the one I was used to. It had been a mistake that day. I didn't intend to try and seduce him, but I woke up late that morning, and I just couldn't find any of my usual underwear. So I had to put on the one I could find. It was one of my old ones, the one I used years ago before I got pregnant and had changes in the size of my body. So it pushed my breasts higher and right above my top. Paul had been home that day, so I just wore a sweater over it, but when I got to the dance class, I took it off. Kelvin's eyes didn't leave my chest as we danced that morning. He kept staring at me, and I liked it very much. I liked how he tried to hide his interest, but failed. Luckily, no one else noticed the whole time. No one could suspect a pastor's wife and her dance instructor. By the end of that class, I had decided I needed to go shopping for my new dance clothes. I bought revealing tops and tight pants. I wanted to show Kelvin what he could be missing. And I was satisfied, because each time I wore those outfits to classes, Kelvin's reaction to them made me happy. Although the women in the class with me were starting to notice my different dressing. One of them had even stylishly asked me a stupid question. She asked if that was what Pastor Paul preferred now. I knew I had to do something before people started whispering, and eventually telling Paul about it. Paul didn't know anything about my new clothes. They were kept in the boot of my car, and I only changed into them when I was halfway to the class, so I decided to take private classes instead, just the two of us, together in the evenings. When Paul asked why I didn't take dance class with others anymore, I lied to him that it wasn't convenient, because of my work at the church, and that I didn't like how sore I always was afterwards. I told him that the soreness reduced my effectiveness, but I could sleep it off in the evenings and be all right in the mornings. Paul agreed with it. He didn't question me any further. He trusted me. Despite knowing that my instructor was a male, he had always told me that marriage was built on trust and God's love. So I started spending my evenings with Kelvin. We did everything else, but not dancing. Even when we did dance, it felt like seduction, not dancing, because Kelvin always ensured we did some moves. That required 2 dancers and body contact, lots of it. And we would also talk. Mostly I did the talking. I told him everything about my marriage. I even told him about the lies I told, my past, and even about tying my tubes, secrets that Paul knew nothing about. Kelvin told me that I made the right decision. He said that he would do the same if he was me, and I felt encouraged and happy. I thought that I finally found someone who understood me. I told him about our sex lives and how frustrating it had been for me. I told him everything, even though all I knew about him was that he was the dance instructor, and he wanted a change of environment. He said nothing useful about his past, but I was fine with it stupidly. I just liked his company so much, and the lustful feelings I had whenever I was around him, until one day, everything just really changed. Our dancing was no longer seduction, but the sinful act itself. That evening, I had gone to dance class with Kelvin as usual. But this time, I wasn't in a hurry to leave. Paul was out of town. He had been invited for ministerial work in another state, and he took our son along with him. I couldn't go with him, because I had to stay back and take care of things, and the other truth would be because I didn't want to miss spending time with Kelvin. So that evening, I didn't have to rush back home to prepare dinner for my family, or fear that Paul would suspect me if I got home too late. And Kelvin, he offered that I came to his place, to have dinner with him, and I finally accepted his offer. It was getting dark when we left the class. I wasn't afraid that anyone would recognize me, and Kelvin apparently lived on the outskirts, so I felt safe, even when the dinner was just pizza, something we didn't have to come that far to eat. But then after eating, Kelvin suggested that we watch a movie together, and I agreed. But somehow we ended up not watching a movie at all. One minute I was laughing and teasing Kelvin. The next minute we were kissing. We were so in the mood that we even forgot to use protection. It was only after the whole thing. Kelvin made an insulting remark, and I remember leaving his place really angry. He asked me after having sex, for the first time together, if I was clean. I was so angry with him. Paul never said things like that. He would instead kiss me and thank me. But Kelvin had instead asked if I had no sexually transmittable infections. For a few days after that, I refused to attend classes, even though he kept calling and apologizing repeatedly. I only resumed dance class after a week because I didn't want Paul suspecting, but I made up my mind that the first time had been a mistake, and that it wasn't going to happen again. I even told him that when I resumed the classes, but it didn't take very long before that resolve was broken. It didn't even take 2 days before Kelvin and I were repeating the act, right in that very class. And for months, things continued between us like that. We found every opportunity we could get to have sex. It was addicting. And the fact that it wasn't something I should be doing. It reminded me of my past. Dating married men knowing that I couldn't get caught. But this time, I was the married one. And it felt thrilling knowing I was playing a dangerous game. Playing the perfect wife and mother even became easier, almost like I was some great actress acting her part. I didn't feel guilty when I preached to women to stay faithful. I didn't even feel bad when after an evening session with Kelvin, I got home and Paul wanted us to be intimate. I still slept with Paul. Even though all that would cloud my mind was Kelvin, and how good he was with his hands, how well he knew my body, and how easily pleased I was when I was with him, and Kelvin knew that. He knew I was addicted to him, and he exploited me. At first it had been minor things I paid for. Well, I thought I was just borrowing him. But Kelvin never replaced the money as he promised. It was first his electricity bill, then his water bill, and eventually the list grew endless. I paid for almost everything: his house rent, his supposed online business, his sister's wedding. Everything that involved money, I did for him. I even started stealing from church's money just to satisfy Kelvin. I had squandered all of my personal money on him, but it still wasn't enough. So at first, there were just been a few changes. One I planned on replacing, but I just couldn't return them. Luckily for me, the church's accountant was me, so I manipulated the records, and I really thought myself lucky. I thought that I was getting away with everything I was doing. I thought I was too smart to get caught. I was so confident, too much that I hadn't realized when Paul caught on to me. I should have suspected when his questions changed from how my day went to what I did in particular. Even when I tried to give vague answers, he would keep pressing for more answers. But I still didn't suspect that he knew anything. I thought he was just genuinely interested in my day. Even when he started spending more time at home, I still suspected nothing. I was even frustrated because it meant I couldn't meet with Kelvin as often as I wanted to. But I found a way around it, sneaking around to be with Kelvin, even when it was inconvenient. I started suspecting Paul knew something when he decided that someone else should handle the church account. I was livid, and I thought it was maybe because he realized that the records were manipulated. But Paul told me that he wanted to relieve me of the duty, and those rumors were flying in church about money issues. He told me that he didn't want anyone pointing accusing fingers at me, even though I never heard anything about those rumors. I accepted his decision. I thought it was really because he wanted to protect me as his wife, but it also meant I had no means of giving Kelvin money. Paul stopped giving me the usual amount of money he gave me. He told me that he had a project he was investing in, and the project was consuming lots of funds, so he was tight on funds, and I really believed him. But I became desperate to get money, because Kelvin convinced me to run away with him. He told me that he was in love with me, and that he didn't want to sneak around anymore. He said that if I could get him the necessary funds, he had someone that could help us get out of the country. I wasn't in love with Kelvin, but the idea of actually traveling and leaving behind my lies was thrilling to me. I liked the idea of being free from church duties and responsibilities as a wife. So I started selling my rather expensive dresses and jewelries. When Paul noticed that half of my wardrobe was gone, he asked me about it, and I lied to him. I told him that I gave them away to some women in church, but I did it secretly and didn't want him asking the women, in case they felt embarrassed by it. Paul said nothing about it, but since he didn't complain, I thought it meant he approved of it, so I continued doing that. But surely the truth always comes out, regardless of how long you try to keep it from doing so. Because Paul found my clothes, the ones I wore to dance classes. Paul's car had been faulty that day, and he decided to borrow mine. Kelvin wasn't in town that day, so I didn't have to meet up with him, so I agreed to let Paul use my car. I had totally forgotten about the clothes in the boot. And hours later, Paul showed up with them, including the new lingerie I bought 2 days ago. I was planning to wear that underneath my coat when I visited Kelvin the next day. We had agreed to meet at his house instead of dance class, and I bought it with dirty intentions. But my plan was ruined with it staring at me right in the face, in my husband's hands, amidst the other revealing outfits. Paul was very angry, and he asked me if those were the clothes I had been wearing to my classes. I denied it. I told him that I never wore things like that. I lied that it belonged to a woman who attended dance class with me. I told him that she must have forgotten to pick all her stuff. Paul said nothing. He just dumped the clothes at my feet and left the house. For the next few days, Paul didn't come home. When I called him, he didn't reply. He only replied to one of my many texts, and he told me he was busy and that he wouldn't be home in the next few days, instead of reading between the lines. I was still too confident. I thought that if Paul still doubted anything, he would have said so that day. I thought that him being away was a great opportunity. Prior to that day, Paul had decided that it was better for Peter to go to a boarding school, and I agreed to it, for my own selfish reasons. So with both of them not being around, I thought I was free. I had started to attend the morning class with the other women too, not because I wanted to, but because I was starting to gain weight in places I didn't like. And all Kelvin and I ever did in the evening was have sex. We never really worked out, so to make up for it, I started attending both sessions. And after 3 days, Paul still didn't come home. I felt super good, stupidly. And I even decided that morning that I was going to wear my sexy outfit from home. I didn't care that some women who came to our church were there. I was feeling super confident. That day, I wore a top without a bra. The top had a very low back. The front too wasn't concealing much either. And my leggings were all net except the vital part, which was covered with actual clothes. I didn't mind the looks I got as I walked into the class. I was more than satisfied with the look on Kelvin's face as we danced. I even danced more than the others, and I was really happy doing it. Until someone walked in. My back was against the door while I danced the routine, so I didn't know who it was until I noticed everyone keeping quiet. Even Kelvin, who had been shouting out encouragement, and the numbers was quiet too. I turned around to see what was happening and froze instantly. It was Paul, and he was watching me. I didn't know that he was back. He didn't even know where I took my dance lessons. So seeing him there was a huge shock. I tried to shamefully cover up with my sweater, but Paul just smiled. Then he turned and called someone in. It was a woman. I had never seen her before, but she seemed to know Kelvin, and he knew her too, because the instant he saw her, he froze. I got the shock of my life minutes later when I found out the truth about Kelvin. The woman said that Kelvin married her 3 years ago, only to gain access to all her money, and he stole everything. But she found out too late. She found one of his victims and she told her that he had scammed 2 other women using that same method. She said she wanted to arrest him when she found out the truth. But he ran away, and she had been looking for him ever since. Apparently, luckily for her, she found Paul, who brought her there. I was so shocked. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't believe that Kelvin was someone like that. It meant he was also planning on doing the same as he did to her to me. Paul kept watching me as she spoke, and then finally he asked me, "Do you like the surprise? I brought your lover's wife to meet you." I felt like I was suddenly drowning. I couldn't breathe properly, and my heart was racing so fast. There was no denying anything. Paul knew, and he had purposely done everything to humiliate me. The women gasped and started to talk. Vaguely, I heard someone say that it was probably the reason I dressed indecently, but I wasn't even paying attention to anyone else. But Paul. I was still trying to say something when Kelvin pushed me. In his attempt to escape, I fell down hard and I just lost consciousness immediately. I woke up in the hospital late in the evening, with no one beside me. I was all alone. Although my hospital bills had been settled, I was so scared to go home. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how and when he found out, just knowing that he knew about my affair, and went as far as exposing me publicly was scary. But before I left the hospital, I saw people whispering about me. They were pointing fingers at me and looking at me in disgust. I didn't understand what was going on. But when I finally switched on my phone, I was shocked to see how popular I had become in just a day. The whole story was on social media, especially when Paul had brought Kelvin's wife to expose us. I didn't even know someone had it on record, and that person had posted it on social media. I was so shocked to see that I was trending. I was tagged as a cheating pastor's wife. Call me a coward. But I couldn't go home after that. I couldn't face Paul after that public disgrace. So I ran. I hid in a hotel. It's only been 2 days, but it feels like I'm in hell from all the heat I've been receiving. I'm so scared to face the truth. I don't know how to fix what I broke. I don't know if there's anything I can do to stop this, or perhaps rewind time. I'm so afraid to face the consequences of my actions. Update. Hello everyone. It's been a month since my last post here, and this is possibly my last post here too, seeing that none of you wants me here. I see all of your brutal and harsh comments, very painful and wicked, but I cannot even blame you for them, because I deserve every single hate I have towards me right now. If I hadn't done the things that I did, I wouldn't have ended up here in this situation. And I wish I could say that things got better, that Paul forgave me and we moved on, or that maybe time just reversed somehow and I was able to change my fate. But sadly, that isn't the case. I thought running away would perhaps push away the consequences of my actions. Maybe when I did show up, Paul would be less angry, or maybe the world would have forgotten. But I was so wrong. For weeks now, the story hasn't died down. I've become an object of public ridicule. People who barely knew me had things to say about me. Even the women in church joined in the backlash. They supported Paul and referred to me as Jezebel. They spoke about my relationship with Kelvin and how they always knew I wasn't worthy of Paul. Different stories about me keep flying online. The woman whose husband I cheated with many years ago joined in. They bashed me online, called me a whore, and painted me as evil. Kelvin didn't even receive half the backslash that I did, even though he's now serving time in prison. Apparently, he was caught and couldn't escape, despite having knocked me down because of it. No one talked about him. I was the one who faced most of the insults and abuse. I wasn't worthy of Paul or anyone else. Paul became popular. He was the saint whose wife was a devil. He even got more members in the church. They pitied him for having lived with someone as evil as me, while I stayed in hiding, for fear of being attacked by Paul's faithful members. No one defended me, not one person. I became the world's most hated person. But then I found out the most shocking thing on the day I finally mustered courage to see Paul. I wanted to apologize properly to him. This was after 2 weeks of hiding, but my apologies had meant nothing to Paul, not after he revealed what he did to me. He told me he was the one who hired the person who posted it online. He said he wanted me to suffer for what I did, and he didn't want to cover up my sin. He said, and I quote, "I didn't want there to be a place on earth that you could hide. I wanted everyone to know you for what you are." I cried so badly that day, as Paul said everything he did to ensure that I suffered. But Paul didn't even pity me. He just watched me cry without any sort of remorse. Apologizing was useless. He didn't even want to hear me speak. And it was also difficult to overcome the heaviness in my throat and my tears. He eventually threw the divorce papers at me. He told me to sign them if I had any sort of shame left in me. And I did. Not because I wanted to let go, but I had to. Because of my son. I was ashamed to face him again. I didn't think this far ahead. I didn't think really deeply about the consequences. Because if I had known it would lead to this, I never would have done it. Paul kicked me out after I signed those papers, sealing my fate. It was over. I was done. Totally ruined. I have no husband or a son anymore. I know that Peter will never want to see me again, not if he finds out the reason his dad kicked me out. He will hate me, probably as much as his dad does now. And thinking about that makes my heart ache all over again. I feel so stupid. I should have known that my actions had consequences. I thought that sleeping with Kelvin brought me happiness, but I have realized, only too late, that it means nothing to me. My happiness has really been being with my family, and not this new horror that is now my life. I should have stayed away from Kelvin. The instant I felt attracted to him, I should have switched dance instructor, or even canceled altogether. I should never have allowed my greed and selfishness to rid me of what is the most important thing in my life. Life didn't have second chances, but I got a second chance. After living crazily, sleeping with other women's husbands, I got a chance to marry a good man, and I threw it away. All for a few months of pleasure, one that has now given me an eternity of sorrow. With a coward like Kelvin, someone who intended to take all of the money and run away. I feel so disgusted and ashamed of myself. I can barely even look at myself in the minor these days. Remembering everything I did with Kelvin makes my skin crawl. The loneliness and emptiness that has since accompanied me since that day is just horrible. I have no friends, no family, not even a single form of support from anyone. Even strangers think I'm disgusting, because my whole secret is out for the world to see. I miss them so much. I miss Paul and our son. I miss how he would come home with gifts every time. How he would wake up early to make breakfast to surprise me. Our wedding anniversary trips too, and the special birthday celebrations. I miss the way he always tried to make me laugh, with his silly Bible jokes. I miss how easy he made it to love him. I miss his hugs and kisses, and I miss my little Peter, who luckily took nothing of mine, not even my eye color. He will grow to be an amazing person. But the sad thing is, I've lost the privilege to be part of that growth. I know that Paul may remarry. Knowing the women in church, they probably would be throwing themselves at him already. Some woman will become lucky to be a part of his life, his ministry, and our son's life. It's so painful to think of. I know that I can never turn back the hands of time. I've ruined things completely beyond repair, and there's no running from what I did. I will forever be plagued by memories of what used to be, and what can never be, all because of my greed,